This presentation will be going over all the necessary information you will need to understand RFM's compliance policy. The Corporations Act 2001 is the main and most important piece of legislation that applies to RFM. RFM's internal documents, constitutions, compliant plans, policies, are consistent with the Act. The application and compliance with the Corporations Act is monitored by ASIC. ASIC publishes regulatory guides to assist financial service providers in meeting their obligations under the Act. All RFM staff have the duty to assist ASIC with their compliance checks and requests. Other regulations incorporated in RFM's policies include, but are not limited to, RFM's Australian Financial Services AFS licence, Financial Services Council FSC Standards and Guidance Notes, ASX and NSX listing rules, privacy laws, relevant taxation laws and accounting standards, and relevant employment and related laws. RFM has a number of policies and related procedures. Some apply to all business operations, for example, HR policies, code of conduct. Some apply to specific areas such as client services, finance and accounting, asset management, IT. It is important that RFM staff are aware of all RFM policies and have a good working understanding of those that apply in their area. All policies and procedures can be found on RFM's intranet. You should be familiar with the main compliance policies, which includes the Conflict of Interest Management Policy, Breach Management Policy, Complaints Handling Policy and Risk Management Policy, and policies relating to RFM's listed entities, RFF and RFP, such as the Continuous Disclosure Policy and Securities Trading Policy. Executive managers and business unit managers have specific compliance reporting duties and are responsible for compliance in this area. Conflict of interest will arise in circumstances where the interests of the directors or employees or related parties are inconsistent with or diverge from the interests of RFM, or the interests of RFM, its directors, employees, or related parties are inconsistent with or diverge from the interests of the members of the funds, or the interests of RFM as a responsible entity of a fund are inconsistent with or diverge from the interests of RFM as a responsible entity of another fund. A conflict of interest may be actual, apparent, or potential. A person or entity deemed to be a related party of RFM under Section 228 Corporations Act, as modified by Part 5C.7, Corporations Act, or any other person mentioned in Section 208(1)(c, as modified by Section 601(l)(c) Corporations Act. Examples of related parties are RFM in its own capacity, a separate legal entity, RFM as responsible entity for a scheme, i.e. RFF, RFP, RFM Farming, a subsidiary company, a director or employee of RFM, or a directors or employees' company and those of their spouses, parents, or children. Examples of related party transactions include a loan from RFM to a scheme to scheme loan, one scheme investing into another scheme, i.e. RFA investing in RMA, scheme leases an asset to RFM Farming, scheme engages RFM Farming to provide services, or a director's company provides services to a scheme. RFM employees are required to disclose their personal interests, for example, a second job, a private business competing in some way with RFM. You can refer to the Code of Conduct for more examples and the disclosure form. RFM directors, executive managers, business unit managers, AFSL responsible managers must disclose their interests in securities. Example, interest in RFM or RFM schemes, directorship, listed and unlisted shares. These disclosures are updated annually. Entity conflicts, for example, where one RFM scheme provides a loan to another, require the board approval. Legal review and sign-off is also required. In some circumstances, a unit holder or ASIC approval may be required. Please note that there are additional specific requirements if the transaction relates to a listed entity. All documentation pertaining to conflict of interest and related party transactions is kept on file as it is subject to annual compliance plan audit. In some circumstances, the following additional documentation may need to be provided to existing unit holders and investors: product disclosure statements, supplementary product disclosure statements, or an explanatory memorandum when a unit holder meeting is required. The registers are managed by the compliance officer and are regularly updated. The policy or any changes to it must be approved by the board. All conflicts of interest and related party transactions are reported to the board and the Internal Compliance Committee. Transactions are audited annually by PricewaterhouseCoopers, the compliance plan auditor, and can be audited by ASIC if required. All conflicts of interest or related party transactions should be reported to the compliance officer as soon as they arise. A breach means non-compliance with financial services laws, other applicable laws that regulate the conduct of RFM's business, and RFM's internal policies. A breach includes a likely breach, i.e., a breach will occur if you are no longer able to comply with the company's obligations, or an event that may occur in the future. A minor or technical breach is a breach which has minimal impact on RFM's ability to comply with the conditions of the Corporations Act and our license, effectively manage and operate its managed investment schemes, and deal with clients. They are likely to be isolated incidents and rated 1 to 5 on the rating scale. Examples include a unit pricing error of an immaterial amount involving a small number of clients, or IT system backup was missed on one day. Significant breaches are those that are not categorized as minor or technical. Systematic occurrence of minor breaches can result in the breaches being significant. They are rated 6 to 10 on the rating scale and must be reported to ASIC immediately, and in any event within 10 business days of RFM becoming aware of the breach. Examples of significant breaches are RFM's inability to meet its license conditions, insufficient cash, or the inability to meet its debts when they fall due, large material, financial losses to the investors, or lack of the appropriate insurance, PI, or liability. All breaches are reported to the board and the Internal Compliance Committee. The breaches reported to the board are reviewed monthly and quarterly by the ICC. The breach register and breaches are audited annually by PricewaterhouseCoopers and can be audited by ASIC if requested. Compliance must be made aware of any breaches, and these should be reported to the compliance officer as soon as possible. It is required that the breach is logged into Ticket, inputting the detail into the breach report form. The information required is specified in the Breach Management Policy, Section 2.4, Recording Breaches, and Schedule 1, Ticket Compliance Breach Report Form. Further reading is located in ASIC Regulatory Guide 78, Breach Reporting by AFS licensees. There are strict guidelines surrounding the collection and use of personal data and tax file numbers. The information provided may only be used for the purpose for which it was intended, unless the person has consented to the information being used for a secondary purpose or as part of the normal operations of the company with which the person is dealing. Please refer to RFM's privacy policy for details and its application. The client services team, who are well trained in this respect, generally handle complaints. If you receive a complaint, please refer it to the client services supervisor or the fund administrator. Complaints are recorded in the complaints register. All complaints are reported to the board and the Internal Compliance Committee. The register is audited annually by the auditor. RFM is a member of Financial Ombudsman Service, FOS, an external dispute resolution provider. This is a requirement of RFM's license. National executive and business managers report monthly to the board. All risk owners are responsible for reviewing and updating existing risks on a regular basis, including advising of new identified risks. The board receives a monthly report on all risks rated high and extreme. Project-related risks are managed by the project manager during the life of the project. Risk management programs are audited annually by the auditor and can be audited by ASIC if requested. The Risk Management Plan, Corporate Risks, Business Continuity, AML, CTF, is managed by the Internal Compliance Committee, which reports directly to the board. The appointed AML, CTF Compliance Officer, Executive Manager, Funds Management, is responsible for compliance with the relevant legislation, AML, CTF Act of 2006, and reporting to AUSTRAC. HSE is managed by the National HSE Committee. The National HSE Committee comprises of the following members: Executive Funds Management, National Manager Human Resources, National Managers, and Business Managers. For further reference, additional detail, and definitions, please refer to the policies as mentioned above. If you have any questions, please contact or see the Compliance Officer, Sandra McBride. This concludes your refresher.